Hello everybody, my name is Paul and welcome back to the new news. I hope that everyone's been having a wonderful last 48 hours since the last time that we were on the air. I hope that you all have been safe, that your family, your friends are safe, and if not, I do hope that you find that safety and security in the very near future. There has been a ton of stuff that has been happening today, to the point that we're a little bit later normal when it comes to the stream tonight for that very reason. There's been a ton of stuff that's been happening throughout the world when it comes to Ukraine, when it comes to, different conflict zones, different major political developments throughout the world. And luckily we will be able to bring all of that to you guys here when we cover the last 48 hours worth of news. Now, why do we do this pretty much every single night? And the reason is that we do this because we want to be able to let people know and inform them about different situations that are going on throughout the world. Because the goal of this is to be the news that gives back. And how that works is, if you check out the video description below, you're going to see a ton of different organizations down there. A ton of them. And we have a couple more that we'll be adding here shortly. One including for indigenous Americans. But anyway, going on from that, we have a ton of stuff that we're trying to do. We're trying to raise money for charities. 100% of everything we do is charity driven. We're never going to be doing any of those super chats on this channel. We're never going to be doing any kind of merchandising or anything like that. We really feel that it's improper to profit off of people's misery. And really, that's kind of how a lot of times the news ends up working out. It's all about the ratings and everything else. And we're trying to stay as an apolitical, unbiased, except with some exceptions, of course, when it comes to the news, and be an independent news source for you while trying to do some good with it. The only way this works is by your guys' support. You guys have been very supportive of the channel, and even more so of the organizations below, and I simply cannot thank you guys enough. So be sure to check out all of those different organizations, charities, and fundraisers below. They do have 80% or more of the donations that each of them receive actually go to their programs, meaning they actually go to helping people. So we're not here to try and pay people's salaries and administration costs. We're here to actually do a little bit good here and put some good back into this world. But with that, I hope that you guys, if you can't give a lot to these organizations, give a little. And if you can't give anything at all, that's totally okay too. The best thing you can do is actually to help us grow this project. That's only capable of being done by you guys, the viewers, and the way you do that is by liking, subscribing, letting your friends know about us, letting your family know about us, sharing it on things like your Discord communities, following us, and sharing our stuff that we put out there on Twitter and Facebook and Telegram and everything else. So thank you very much for the support that you've already given us. This project's already much further along than we ever thought it could be. We didn't realize quite how many people would be this invested in it, and I'm so glad to see the kind of community that you guys have built. So hopefully you guys will check out all of that stuff, help us grow this channel, support the organizations in the description. Most importantly, that's really what this is all about. And if you have more organizations, our Discord is in the description below as well. You can jump on there and you can get in touch with a staff member. If that's all you hang around for, that is perfectly fine by me. But get in touch with a staff member. Let us know if you have another organization. Give us a link for them and kind of a short description of what they do. We'd love to get the vetting process started for them, and we'd love to get them added. The more the merrier. We're trying to help as many people as we can in all different areas of the globe. Especially so if you have one, especially in an area we don't have yet, that is very much welcome. But with that, we're going to go ahead and start getting ready to go into the news here. And there is quite a few things that have been going on, and a lot of this stuff is rather complicated. So I am very willing to answer questions that are put in. If you are in the live stream with us tonight, if you are in the chat, I'm more than willing to answer any questions or comments that you may have. To give you a little bit of a background on myself and my area of expertise, I served in the Marine Corps between 2016 and 2020. I was an 0352 anti-tank missileman, and I served with Victor 27 or 2nd Battalion, 7th Marines. I did 2 tours specifically. My first tour was to Syria, where I spent 4.5 months, and Kuwait, where I spent a month and a half when we were there to fight the Islamic State as part of Operation Inherent Resolve. My second tour I was in charge of anti-armor operations during the Baghdad embassy crisis in 2020, which happened on New Year's. I was one of the 100 Marines that responded to the protests there, and I was also trained Saudi Arabian Marines in the Red Sea, as well as was part of the crisis response force out of Kuwait. So that is my experience. I am a subject matter expert in anti-armored warfare and armored doctrine, specifically Russian doctrine and Chinese military doctrine when it comes to armored warfare. So if you have any questions, please feel free to ask them. I'll be more than happy to answer them within some limits, obviously. But I am also willing to try and answer questions that have to do with other things. I was fully trained as a machine gunner. Of course, I was a rifleman. I am trained in basically almost every aspect of the infantry. And I have some general knowledge in many other things. But if I just don't know something, I'll just have to admit that I don't know. I'm not going to try and... I please also encourage you to do your own research on a lot of these topics. Please do not believe everything said by somebody on the internet just because they may claim to be an expert, because there are a lot of expert opinions and a lot of them can also conflict with each other. So I highly encourage you to do your own research and look into these very same topics on your own as well. But with that, we're going to go ahead and get right into the news here. We got a ton of it, especially when it comes to our special report here in Ukraine, where there has been a ton of different developments over the last 48 hours. The first thing we have is, of course, unfortunately, that child casualty update. We get this near daily at this point from Ukraine. And this one, of course, we have two today. The first one comes from the Prosecutor General's Office of Ukraine, and they say that, quote, since the beginning of Russia's full-scale war against Ukraine, 382 Ukrainian children have died, 741 children have been injured. Most victims among children are from the Donetsk region. That is where some of the heaviest fighting has taken place, and of course, a lot of people thought that because they had lived through the past 8 years of fighting between Ukrainian forces and separatists, Russian-backed separatists, there within the Donetsk and Luhansk regions, that they had pretty much seen it all. And despite the heeds and warnings coming from people such as Pavlo Korolenko, who to this day, in fact, he had a Twitter post today urging people, please evacuate, please leave. And Kiev said the same thing. President Zelensky said the same thing as the Donbas offensive was on the horizon. And unfortunately, a lot of people did not. A lot of people thought they had been through it before. A lot of people really didn't have anywhere to go, and didn't know where they would go, how they would deal with the situation. Weren't willing to leave their homes, and unfortunately, that has led to a lot of civilian casualties throughout these regions. And I'm not at all a fault of theirs. It's more a fault of the Russians completely shelling civilian locations without any regard for the Geneva Conventions. But unfortunately, that has led to quite a few civilian casualties, and most unfortunately among them being children. Quote, as of September 6th, due to Russian military aggression in Ukraine, 236 Ukrainian children were reported missing. 7,343 were deported. And that comes from the press service of the Ukrainian Parliament Commissioner for Human Rights. Deportation of children is actually a war crime punishable under the clause of genocide, according to the Rome Statute and the Geneva Conventions in 1949 and their protocols. Under the Rome Statute, the actual terminology is that the destruction in whole or in part of a specific group, to include the removal of the children of a group and putting them with another. And you can actually take a look at this. In fact, I'll bring it back up. Legal definition of genocide. And we can get this actually from the United Nations website themselves. I'll bring it up over here for you. Forceful, Article 2, the definition in the present convention. This is under the Rome Statute, Article 6 of the International Criminal Court regarding the definition of genocide, and that is that in the present convention, genocide means any of the following acts committed with the intent to destroy, in whole or in part, a national, ethnical, racial, or religious group. As such, killing members of a group, causing serious bodily or mental harm to the members of the group, deliberately inflicting on the group conditions of life calculated to bring about its physical destruction in whole or in part, imposing measures intended to prevent births within the group, and forcibly transferring children of the group to another group. Once again, those 7,343 children which were forcefully deported by the Russian Federation within occupied territories does actually, under the Rome Statute, which I just showed you coming from the UN website, as something that would be consistent with a genocide. Once again, that pushes the measures regarding genocide. In fact, I believe Germany actually appealed to the International Court of Justice today, requesting an intervention into this whole issue on the basis of support regarding genocide clauses. As we jump up here into the more northern regions, that cleanup effort still continues long after the battles and the guns have fallen silent here on the northern front, and we will see that for some time. In fact, today alone, 767 explosives were found in just 0.12 square miles, or just 0.32 square kilometers. This is an extremely small area. 767 pieces of unexploded ordnance were discovered in an area of just 32 hectares is what that boils down to. And this continues to show the terrible problem when it comes to unexploded ordnance. The amount of artillery especially being fired by both sides throughout this war is astronomical. It is insane to think about the amount of ordnance which has been fired. In these areas in the northern part of Ukraine where the Rasputitsa mud soaked in a lot of these munitions, most of these munitions detonate after a crush switch at the front of the munition has impacted, and then it crushes the switch, and that ignites the explosive, and that's generally speaking how a lot of munitions end up working. Well, because of the soft Rasputitsa mud that swallowed entire tanks whole in many cases, these munitions impacted this very soft ground and buried themselves into it with no hope of exploding. And what this means is that in the areas throughout the Ukraine where this mud has taken place, this Rasputitsa in many places, and just where, unlike many other places where sheer amount of artillery has been fired, such as Verdun, the Somme, Passchendaele Ridge, and many other places throughout Europe where major wars have occurred, major areas are going to be just saturated with so many explosives that it just doesn't make sense to go there anymore. Entire areas of the Ardennes forests are actually off limits to people in France, including EOD workers. Much of Ukraine will end up probably being the same way, as this will not just affect Ukrainians in the short term, but this will be an issue of generations. And as I have written here, the silencing of the guns will far from stop the casualties of this war for some time to come. And we're actually getting this from the Ministry of Internal Affairs of Ukraine. And translate this here. Today, the pyrotechnic units of the State Emergency Services were involved in 124 times. 767 explosive items were identified, recovered, and neutralized, including one aerial bomb. The territory with an area of 32 hectares was examined. And so that starts to bring us over here into the Kharkiv area. Kharkiv has seen several developments over the last few days. Of course, a lot of it has to do with shelling. More missiles ended up striking Kharkiv earlier today, and that ended up destroying several apartment blocks and high-rise buildings in downtown Kharkiv itself. No casualties are currently known of right now. We don't know of any actual casualties. However, 3 people and 1 guinea pig were actually ended up being pulled out of the rubble of these residential complexes today, reportedly unharmed. So that's very good to hear. And yes, we do have a video of the poor guinea pig. That poor guinea pig is alive and well. He is a big guinea pig. He is the biggest guinea pig I've ever seen. As you can see. Isn't he just absolutely adorable? Look at the fear in that thing's eyes. It is terrified. I would be too. But unfortunately, yes, this is in downtown. This is from, oh, it would appear that that tweet has been deleted. That's unfortunate. But we do have more footage. It's okay. So this is once again coming from the Ministry of Internal Affairs here in Ukraine. And this is some of that destruction. You can see the immense amount of destruction that occurred at this building, at these high-rise complexes. Keep in mind, Ukraine is continuing to be shelled, Kharkiv especially, by cruise missiles and ballistic missiles. The Russians have no artillery actually in range to hit Kharkiv itself. The only thing they can hit it with is by ballistic missiles. They've been using the Iskander-M, which is one of the most common types of ballistic missiles. They fire those from around the city of Belgorod. They also use S-300 S-400 air defense batteries, which they have taken some air-to-air missiles, surface-to-air missiles, or SAM missiles, and they have actually converted them to hit surface targets. They're wildly inaccurate, but we do notice that they have been using some of these. Most notably, though, they were using them in the Kharkiv, or not the Kharkiv, but the Mykolaiv Oblast. But there are reports of them being used here in Kharkiv as well, especially when fired from a little bit closer near the border. But the destruction of these are highly inaccurate in general, and there are no strategic or tactical important targets in Kharkiv to really strike at this point in the war. It's just not viable for them. It's just too late in the war for any hope of actually taking any part of essentially Kharkiv or trying to capture the city of Kharkiv. At this point, it's just harassing fires. It's just to terrorize the civilian population, and unfortunately, mostly it just kills civilians as well. In fact, we haven't heard of a single military target being hit inside of Kharkiv that has actually killed any kind of troops or major equipment. The shelling also continued. Frontline areas such as over here in Chuihiv were shelled. Quote, rocket attacks on the Chuihiv, Izium, and Budikiv and Kharkiv districts in the Kharkiv region on September 4th. One person was killed, 5 citizens were injured. Local residential outbuildings and production facilities were damaged. And that's coming from Ole Subanov, who is the head of the Kharkiv Regional Military Administration. Over here, this is in Pechenihi. And, quote, rocket attacks on settlement in Pechenihi in Kharkiv region on September the 6th. 4 citizens were injured, including a 13-year-old child. Local residential buildings were damaged, and that comes from Alexander Husorov, who is the Pecheny village head. However, there have been several developments here inside of Kharkiv that are on a much brighter note. First of all, it would appear that a second counteroffensive has begun within the area of Balaklia. Balaklia appears to have had a major offensive operation take place here, and Ukrainian forces did launch this counterattack. Russian forces have been stalled in the Kharkiv Oblast, especially here over by the Izium area, for several months. They have not had any successes. They really did not, when the beginning of the Donbas offensive began, they really didn't even achieve their projected first day objectives. And they took extremely heavy casualties. They have not had the troop concentrations or the concentrations of equipment to really conduct a large-scale attack once again, as they did on the very opening of the Donbas counteroffensive. And what we see is that at this point, they've been whittled down so much that Ukraine is willing to actually launch a counterattack within this area, and it appears to be very successful thus far. However, the intense fighting has seen heavy casualties on both sides. That being said, we are hearing that the Russians are on the withdrawal right now, but those are coming from unconfirmed reports. Reportedly, they have actually evacuated the city at this point. Once again, we can't confirm any of this, and there's very little footage to prove any of it. But we do get some side where, unfortunately, we see some Ukrainian casualties. Ukraine is fighting a war, and unfortunately, casualties do go both ways, as much as no one likes to admit it. And that's kind of what we're seeing here. This is a field hospital that has been set up where Ukrainian casualties are being treated that are coming out of this counteroffensive location. So quite significant fighting. Unfortunately, heavy casualties on both sides, but that is the cost of a war. I mean, there's no two ways around it. But they're not just abandoning posts when it comes to the Russians withdrawing. They're not just abandoning their equipment and their vehicles. They have left their equipment, they have left their BMPs, they have even left their clothes. It appears that they are continuing the tradition of dressing in civilian clothing, as we saw when they are withdrawing from the Kyiv Oblast. You can see just a ton of Russian equipment just left and strewn around. I mean, they have quite literally just dropped everything and run in many of these places. So as I said, it would appear that the Russians just are dropping everything they got and they are running. So they are doing quite a hasty withdrawal out of these areas. But yes, to wrap up this story over here, there has been a counteroffensive. We do not know the extent of it. It seems to be more isolated than at least the Kherson offensive is. But there has been a counteroffensive with some major military operations within the Kharkiv Oblast today. To the best of our knowledge, Russian forces are purportedly on the withdrawal. We do not have major confirmations of this at this point, but it is something to remain hopeful and to at least keep our eye on. And hopefully, at least tomorrow, we should have some better information within the coming days as some of this information begins to come to light and we're able to better and more accurate report on this very fluid situation here within the Kharkiv Oblast. And as we wrap up the Kharkiv Oblast, we immediately begin to roll into the Donbas and into the southern fronts as we begin to look at the real meat and potatoes of the war. This is the major areas of operation. This is where the heaviest, most dirty, bitter fighting, bloody, and bittersweet victories are coming out of. And this is where the major parts of the war are ongoing and where the heaviest operations have been continuing for some time now. And Russian shelling continues to pound areas all across the fronts. And despite taking several major blows to their supply chain, Russian artillery batteries just have a numerical advantage and are able to maintain some kind of a decent rate of fire, at least, to be able to shell civilian populations at many points to cause complete and utter destruction in areas such as Slavyansk, Kramatorsk, Soledar, Siversk, over in Bakhmut, Toretsk, Pisky, Mikivka, and all of the places along the front here. But as we see, this is coming from Pavlo Krylenko, who gives us the daily Donetsk update, essentially. And every single day, he posts the update as to what has happened and the casualties within his oblast, within his area of command. And what we see is 2 updates. These are 24 hours after the fact. So this is from the 25th, reporting on the 24th, and one today, reporting on what happened yesterday. And what we have is, quote, Russian aggressors fired missiles at the Donetsk region on September the 4th. 3 people were killed and the 3 citizens were injured. That's, once again, Pavlo Krylenko. And quote, Russian aggressors fired missiles at the Donetsk region on September the 5th. 4 citizens were injured. And we do have the official Twitter post regarding some of these for you guys, and he's actually brought up several of these. Kharkiv, we're seeing shelling, Avdiivka and Soledar, Poraskovivka. Sorry, my pronunciation is absolutely terrible. And once again, Bakhmut, Kostanivka. And we actually do have some of this information today. But as we jump down here over by Donetsk, just on the outside of Donetsk, actually, we see a destroyed Ukrainian M113, which was spotted outside of Pisky. Now, while everyone likes to talk about the destruction of Russian vehicles, and everyone likes to post destroyed Russian vehicles all over the internet, the fact of the matter is wars go 2 ways. And we have to understand that Ukraine is taking casualties too, and they're taking a lot of them. And that the vehicles and equipment that are being sent to Ukraine is not invincible. These are tools to be used in a war, and they are highly at risk of being destroyed and damaged. And what we see here is an American-donated M113 armored personnel carrier, which has been completely destroyed by Russian forces. We do not know about the status of the crew. This is outside of Pisky. Pisky over here, it lies on the very outskirts of the Donetsk, actual city of Donetsk. And the city of Donetsk is a very strategic and major city. It's very important. It's technically the capital of this region. And the Ukrainian lines lie just on the outside of Donetsk. So there's quite an immense amount of military pressure on this very strategic and important city for the Russians. So trying to push the Ukrainians as far from this city as possible to reduce some of that pressure on it and the requirement for defenses of it. is going to make a lot of difference here. And we see them conducting very highly kinetic operations within the areas just outside the city, and Pisky one being one of them. And once again, here's Neb 113. It has been completely destroyed by the Russians. Very unfortunate to see, but it is unfortunately a fact of the reality of war. As we move over here to Kharkiv, we see that a gymnasium has been shelled, once again being reported by Pavlo Korolenko. This is coming from his official Twitter. The Kharkiv gymnasium likely did not have anybody that was injured as a result of the shelling or killed. However, reportedly this site was being used as a humanitarian aid distribution center within this general area. So unfortunately, it appears to have been severely damaged and is no longer usable. Take a look. Once again, this coming from the gymnasium. We do have a second post regarding a lot of this stuff. And you see here just the immense amount of rubble. I mean, it's just destroyed. There is no hope of this will have to be demolished and completely rebuilt. But luckily, no one was injured. But reportedly, once again, that was a humanitarian aid distribution area here within the local vicinity. And as we continue down here along the front, we have a couple of different developments. First of all, if you are a Russian in the middle of this, if you're on the receiving end of this next video, you are having a very, very, very bad day. This is a very interesting video. I've never seen HIMARS fired quite this way, but I do believe it is possible. This is a very, seems to be a very low trajectory of flight path, or at least a very low level flight path for HIMARS missiles. They're not being fired in their standard way, but it's very interesting. So this is an entire 4-vehicle battery of HIMARS firing at the same time in broad daylight. Take a look. Yeah, if you are the Russian on the back end of that, or like if you're getting ready to be receiving that, you are having an absolutely terrible day. That is not that is not how I would like my day to start, end, or deal. Like that, I just nope. But it's amazing to see that Ukraine is finding very new and interesting ways to fire these HIMARS systems. It could be in a possibility to try and limit the amount of, or to try and disrupt any kind of tracking and shoot down capabilities of Russian air defense forces and try and negate those capabilities by the Russians. Instead of firing at a high level or a high attack angle, essentially, they're firing them at a very low level, making them harder to track, disrupting radar, that kind of thing. But I don't know. I've never seen them used this way. I've only seen them with high angle attacks. So very interesting to say the least, but very cool visual effect at least. 5 missiles and 1 helicopter, specifically a Ka-52 Alligator, was downed here here along the southern front. Quote, the Armed Forces of Ukraine shot down 5 Russian missiles and an enemy helicopter Ka-52 on the morning of September 6th. And that's coming from Yuri Hinat, who is the spokesman of the Air Force Command of the Ukrainian Armed Forces. Cope Cages 2.0, that's what we have titled this. For those that don't know, the cope cages are javelin cages. A javelin cage is a Russian development. The Javelin anti-tank missile is very effective, and one of the reasons why it's very effective is its top-down attack feature. The weakest point in an armor on a tank, generally speaking, is the top of the turret. You armor the front, you armor the sides, heck, you even armor the back and the underside. Generally speaking, you don't really have to armor the top of the tank. And so that's kind of the whole exploitation. One of the major exploitations that the Javelin makes very well use of. This is very common knowledge too. Other missiles use this feature. The TOW system has several missiles variants that will do this as well. It's very effective. We've seen it be effective time and time again. The Javelin is very strong. However, to negate it, they have tried to put cages on the top of these tanks. This is a development long before this war. Javelin cages were developed quite some time ago. The T-90s have been outfitted with them for some time as well, since their early 2000s and mid-2010s upgrades especially. The whole point of it is to destroy the precursor charge on impact with the top of the tank, and that leaves other armor such as your reactive armors underneath, your ERA, and your NERA as well, on the top of the turret. Well, that will negate the main charge before it punches through the main armor of your tank. That is the idea. The reality is it doesn't work very well. However, the Russians are trying some new designs. This is a new designed Javelin cage. Never seen one like this before. It's very interesting. The angles on it. It appears that this one is expecting to be, I'm going to guess and say, is they have this as kind of like a catch for a Javelin that's coming down from the frontal angle. However, if I'm shooting a Javelin, I'm probably going to be looking at a broadside angle just because it's easier for me to shoot at. And if I'm a Javelin team, it's also a lot easier for me to outmaneuver your bulky, limited view of a tank. But yeah, so this doesn't work. For anyone wondering, this doesn't work. There is no running or hiding from the Javelin. The Javelin will kill you. If you are locked onto as a target, whether you be a lone guy in a field or if you be a giant tank or even if you're a helicopter, if your Javelin's locked onto you, it's going to kill you. And there's nothing you can do. There's no amount of running or hiding or defensive techniques that you could possibly do to beat the Javelin. So, it's just, I would just leave. I would just leave. Now, something that popped up onto our Discord, actually, and somebody actually asked me to take a look at this. I think it was Yayunda, I think is who it was. I'm sorry if I butchered that name. But, so something that they sent in was actually this video. And that is because a thing of reportedly Iranian munitions have been found inside of Ukraine being used by the Ukrainian armed forces. And the question is, where did Ukraine get this stuff? They've also, there's been a lot of things of, there's been some munitions, questionable munitions before. There have been questionable weapon systems that are reportedly Iranian. And I'm more than willing to answer some of these questions. So the thing is that a lot of this stuff was destined for Yemen. The United States actually patrols in the Gulf of Oman, and the Iranians, the IRGC, or the Iranian Republican Guard Corps, have been they've been smuggling weapons to the Houthi rebels. The Houthi rebels are a group of rebels within Yemen that have overthrown the government and a lot of other things, and they've been fighting the Saudi coalition. Iran and Saudi Arabia hate each other. It's mostly based off of religious lines. One is Sunni, one is Shia, most predominantly speaking. Both of them have very opposing viewpoints. Both of them are large, big powers in the Middle East. Both of them vie for influence over Iraq and other areas within the country or within the region, specifically in Yemen. Yemen has been a very deadly situation overall. Saudi Arabia has lost a lot of troops in Yemen fighting there. It's been very, very bitter fighting that isn't very highly reported on, but it's been some very, very tough fighting for them. And they've been fighting the Houthi rebels, which are being supplied by Iran. Iran is the one that keeps shipping equipment and munitions and weapons and missiles and drones and everything else under the sun to the Houthis, just so that way they can vicariously kill Saudis. That is the whole purpose. The United States is actually patrolling the Gulf of Oman and seizes these weapon shipments to the Houthi rebels because it breaks several different trade agreements and trade embargoes. And what they end up doing with it is, well, most of the time you would usually destroy it, dump it off in the ocean somewhere where it can't be recaptured or whatever. But a lot of this gets ended up just taken back with the ship. Well, this gets put into American stockpiles. How else does the United States have some of the stuff the United States has? Why do we have Soviet Kalashnikovs? Because we got Soviet Kalashnikovs somewhere. Don't ask where, I don't know. But the United States has also grabbed up entire parts of Soviet submarines before. So I'm not going to question a whole lot of things. Just know that we do get them. We seize these weapon shipments more often than you would think, and it's very frequent occurrence. A lot of times they're smaller shipments. Larger shipments will get reported on quite frequently. But these munitions and equipment, such as we've seen 122 millimeter mortar systems here inside of Ukraine that were Iranian, still in the box, brand new, just came out of the factory for the Iranians, and were getting shipped to the Houthis. We picked it up, we had it, we gave it to the Ukraine because Ukraine will take whatever they can get. And this is the same thing with munitions. So this is 122 millimeter artillery rounds that are Iranian made. They're actually from reportedly this year. They're OFP 462 IR, which is a rocket assisted HE round, and they have been getting these probably from the United States. The Iranians are going to supply Russia. They're not going to be supplying Ukraine. They have no want to supply Ukraine. They probably hate Ukraine because they hate any Western power, essentially. The Ayatollah is an assahola. What can I tell you? But they make a lot of munitions that Ukraine's using right now. So that's basically the backstory behind this video. Take a look. So you can see this box is very similar to others that have been used, that have been taken. The packing labels for this match ones that were seized by the Israeli Defense Forces. You can see the round here. He's setting it up. He's making sure it's ready to go. Man, as you can see, that it is an Iranian munition. Yes, it is an Iranian munition, but that is how they are getting them. They're being seized by the Americans and immediately handed over to somebody who could actually use them, and use them for a good reason. And over here, give them hell. These are two S7 Peons. This is a 203 millimeter self-propelled gun battery that are opened up on Russian positions, and it's just a really cool video. We thought we might as well throw this in for you. It's somewhere here in the Donbas, and it's a pretty cool slow-mo bit. Take a look. So take a look. If you take a closer look here, you can see this thing as it fires. And if you actually slow this down as it fires, so you see it fire, and see that thing and that nice little cone right there? Yeah, that's a 203 millimeter artillery shell. It's getting ready to go screw up someone's day. And you can see as it streaks through the air. You can actually see as the air is getting displaced around that round too, as it spins through the air on its way to go screw up some Russian guy's life. And before we jump up there to the north, we want to point out a partisan activity down here in Berdyansk. The port of Berdyansk has been under Russian occupation for some time now. It's a major hub of Russian logistical networks, and was the main port being used here within the occupied parts of Ukraine by the Russians before the port of Mariupol opened up after it was demined. And a Russian officer, reportedly the one in charge of Berdyansk, has been killed by Ukrainian partisans operating in the port city. Artem Borodin, who was the appointed Russian officer overseeing the port city of Berdyansk within the occupied Zaporizhzhia Oblast, is dead after he reportedly lost both of his legs in a car explosion. His car, reportedly a gas, was actually rigged to explode by Ukrainian partisans, which then detonated when he tried to turn the vehicle on. This is one of many partisan activities. Most of these we will not hear of and will not know about until after the war has been over and these areas have been liberated. The partisans conduct a lot of operations, and they are quite extensive to the point of it brings back memories of things such as the French resistance during the German occupation of World War II and the resistance movements of many other areas of Europe. Just take a look. But anyway, that is the commander of the city of Berdyansk, which has been killed by Ukrainian partisans. Up here in the Zaporizhzhia Oblast, 200 plus Ukrainian civilians are actually still in captivity. Quote, since the beginning of Russia's full-scale war against Ukraine, Russian occupiers have kidnapped almost 500 Ukrainian citizens in the Zaporizhzhia region. More than 200 Ukrainians are still being held in captivity, and that comes from Alexander Staruk, who is the head of the Zaporizhzhia Regional Military Administration. Most of these civilians are being kept at places that could quite literally be called a concentration camp. These are filtration camps or filtration points. The filtration point system was developed by the Russian Federation in the early to mid 90s and carried on even through to today. The filtration point system has been members that have oversaw these camps and worked within them have been prosecuted for war crimes underneath the International Court of Justice, as well as the Human Rights Court of Europe. And these are for things such as systematic beatings, rape, torture, deprivation of sanitation, deprivation of sleep, deprivation of food, deprivation of water, and as well as summary execution. So it has been, theaters are extremely rough locations. Unfortunately, it would appear that over 200 people out of the Zaporizhzhia Oblast alone, and these are civilians, these do not include military personnel, are actually there in some of these camps still. Over here in Enhadar at the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant, the International Atomic Energy Administration has released their official report on the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant. They have reported that Russia has deployed equipment and military personnel on and around the area and the territory of the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant. The IAEA mission also noted the presence of the Rosatom expert group there, which is a German nuclear energy group. Quote, there is an urgent need for interim measures to prevent a nuclear accident arising from physical damage caused by military means. The report is very diplomatic, though, and it avoids talking about who is responsible for the shelling of the plant itself. And you can actually go here and you can actually read this entire report regarding this situation. So it's quite an extensive report. I believe it's 52 pages long, so I'm not going to read it all here. They cover the 7 pillars. Let's see here. No staff. They recorded nuclear. So basically, they took over the facility. There was an immense amount of damage to some of the integral parts of the facility. And that cruise missiles flew over the facility, hit area of the nitrogen oxygen stations, cut the power supply. The team observed the presence of Russian military personnel, vehicles, and equipment at various places at the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant, including several military trucks on the ground floor of Unit 1 and Unit 2 turbine halls, and military vehicles stationed under the overpass connecting the reactor units. The team also observed the presence of an expert group of Russian ergonom. It was explained to the team by the Ukrainian plant staff and managers that the role of this expert group was to provide advice on nuclear safety, security, and operations to the management of the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant. Yep, so, yeah. The thing is that you don't put military equipment inside of nuclear facilities. There's a reason for that. Because technically, under the Geneva Convention, putting military equipment at a nuclear facility then makes that nuclear facility technically a valid military target, because it now loses its value of protection. So technically, Ukraine could strike it. It would be in their worst interest to do so, because the most heavily affected country, should there be a nuclear meltdown at the plant, would be Ukraine itself. So in destroying the Russian troops at the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant, Ukraine would also irradiate themselves and make their entire country a nuclear wasteland. Demise of BS asks, so what happens next? You know, that's a very interesting question. From my understanding, and I haven't read everything, I haven't read the report super thoroughly, okay? I just know that it has been released and some of the developments coming from it. Reportedly, they are requesting that there be a military exclusion zone that is set up by the United Nations around the Enhadar and the Zaporizhzhia nuclear facility, to prevent military forces and strikes happening there. They would also like to expand their presence of the International Atomic Energy Administration there at the plant. And my understanding is that that is going up to the the UN Security Council. I do not know if it has already tabled, and I do not know if it has tabled what the results of that discussion are. But I can tell you that that is probably where it will lead to next, as that is something that they would be most interested in. They're definitely going to make the recommendations to what needs to be what needs to be done, and 100% that begins with demilitarizing the entirety of the Zaporizhzhia nuclear facility. Not having, once again, by putting military equipment there, you automatically endanger that facility. Because not everyone's going to look at that as a nuclear site. They're going to look at that and go Russian military base, because the Russian military is in their country. This brings up a lot of interesting questions that I don't think everyone has the answers to yet. Simply because the last time something happened, it was within the Soviet occupied area, and they dealt with it on their own. And now it's in a war zone with two industrial countries that are killing each other in a war of attrition. And how do you deal with the largest nuclear reactor in Europe in the middle of a war zone? It's not a situation anyone's had to deal with before. It's not an easy situation. The United Nations can't hardly get anybody into the occupied areas of Russia or of Ukraine, occupied territory of Ukraine. But it's like they can't even get humanitarian aid in there. They fought to get the IAEA team in there, and to get a UN mission to the Azovstal to evacuate civilians, because there's over 1,000 of them there. And that had to be spearheaded by the International Committee of the Red Cross, because the IRCR has, or the ICRC has a thing with Russia, and they're explicitly labeled within the Geneva Convention over and over again. So it's going to be a very tough decision, because in order to create an exclusion zone, that exclusion zone has to be enforced. That exclusion zone has to be enforced by UN peacekeepers. UN peacekeepers, generally speaking, are drawn from NATO-aligned countries. Hence why Yugoslavia was a thing. Yugoslavia, those NATO airstrikes in Yugoslavia, guess what? That was at the request of United Nations peacekeepers in Yugoslavia that were authorized by the United Nations Security Council to provide lethal force aid, or to use lethal force to protect civilian zones within Yugoslavia during the breakup, which is Bosnia, Herzegovina, Serbia, and all of them killing each other. So, in general, that usually means a similar thing with this. And that really puts the United Nations and any NATO country that would be here precariously close to an escalation in many other ways, even though it's a UN peacekeeping mission. This would probably be one of the most vital missions a UN peacekeeper will have ever done, if that is the case, if it gets approved, which I highly doubt, because Russia still maintains a veto. As you jump over here, just across the way into the Dniprovitsk Oblast, we see that the Russian, that there's more shelling that has rocked here. And we see that, quote, Russian occupiers shelled the Dniprovitsk region on September the 5th. One person was killed. 3 citizens were injured. All injured victims are in serious condition. That's coming from Valentin Reznichenko, who's the head of the Dniprovitsk Regional Military Administration. And before we get to the Kherson Oblast, we immediately are going to jump down here into Crimea, where we see that the entire Black Sea Fleet, with the exception of, I think, one warship, has officially left Sevastopol. Now, we do not know if this is permanent. This could just be the fact that their entire fleet has steamed to sea. But this translation of this individual, probably the Rashists have run away. We're waiting for the armed forces of Ukraine. But someone filmed this.
Севастополь, Херсонес, бухта. Остался один торпедный катер у них ракетный. А тут и все. Наверное, рашисты свалились с Сыкуны. Чекаемо на ЗСУ, долбоебы.
So yeah, they apparently emptied the entirety of the Black Sea Fleet out of Sevastopol. Where they've gone, nobody knows. And that finally brings us up here into the Kherson Oblast and the Mykolaiv Oblast, where the main stories have been coming from over about the last week and a half. On the 29th of August, Ukraine began a counteroffensive here inside of the Kherson Oblast that has seen quite an amount of successes. And we continue to see even more successes today. On Sunday, we saw that the Ukrainian the city of Vysokopilia was actually liberated, and they raised a flag on there over the hospital, which made for a very, very impressive photo. after they had officially liberated the city. And we are starting to see a lot of stuff. Of course, I titled this, thanks guys, the biggest supplier of military equipment to Ukraine is the Russians. I still think that's the truth, because they keep abandoning so many vehicles, so many BMPs, BMDs, BTRs, tanks. I mean, T-62s, T-72s, T-80s, T-90s, T-64s. They have BRDM-2s, gases, KAMAZ vehicles, like their logistical trucks. They have abandoned so much equipment throughout the course of this war. It is stupid. I have never seen anything like it. The Iraqi army didn't abandon equipment this badly. The Iraqi army, during the invasion in 2003, did not abandon their equipment this badly. Not this badly. Bad. It was very bad. You could tell they really didn't want to fight that war, but it wasn't this bad. This is insane. And what we see is it's just stupid. This is a full T-72. This is their 89 upgrade, their 1989 upgrade, T-72. And it's in full working order. There's nothing wrong with it. Probably just need a diesel if it needed that. Yep, there it is. So, yep, just a totally perfectly good working T-72, guys. Not destroyed, not even really damaged. It's just abandoned, is all. They just abandoned it. Like, what? Why? Why would you do this? Here's another one. This is a BMD.
Красавчику хуйню ебать нахуй. Намутила, блядь. Ну шо, пидорасы, блядь. Тепер будем вас наю і мочить, нахуй, блядь, тварі, блядь. Ха-ха-ха. Поймали трофей!
This is a BTR-82A. like, why? Why? Demise FPS says, why don't they set charges or disable it? You know, that's the question. Like, why don't they? Like, I don't understand it. I really don't. Like, if I knew, like, I was gonna, like, I'd at least throw, like, a hand grenade in there or something, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know, set a campfire, burn the inside, throw a hand grenade, and put all the ammunition in a pile and throw a hand grenade in there so it sets it off, like, something. These guys have just abandoned their stuff, and it really shows the hastiness of their retreats in a lot of places. A lot of this is reportedly some of the stuff that they're picking up out of Vesicopia, and it really shows you just how bad the Russians have broken in a lot of these places. Charlton Brooks says all those clips of trainloads of vehicles coming across the Crimean Bridge, they were just fresh supplies for the Ukrainian army. Yeah, pretty much. I mean, it's think of it very much like the beginning of the war. when the Russians were withdrawing from the Kyiv area. They just up and left everything. There's just a ton of stuff that they left behind. Entire campsites, their weapons, their vests, their equipment, their vehicles, their fuel, everything. And they quite literally just left. Why you wouldn't drive it away? Because that would seem to me at least kind of faster than walking or running. No idea. But they are completely breaking and routing in several places. And it's just kind of incomprehensible, the kind of things that they're leaving behind. That's immediately going to get a fresh coat of spray paint turned around and used against them. That's only going to make their lives even more difficult. Leaving these vehicles behind does nothing for them. Just makes it easier for the Ukrainians later. And we see them, we know that they have a defense in depth within the Kherson Oblast, but it doesn't matter a whole lot if you just keep giving away the vehicles in your defenses. It doesn't matter. If you just keep giving the enemy equipment, then eventually they just outgun you. And that's kind of where it seems to be headed here. There isn't any way for them to escape. The bridge over Novokhovka has been destroyed. They can't even get to the other side of the Kherson Oblast, as we'll get to here a little bit later. But the Antonovsky Bridge is destroyed. The crossing at Novokhovka has been destroyed. Any pontoon attempts have been destroyed. The only thing you have left is a ferry. Reportedly, the one at Novokhovka has also been destroyed. The Antonovsky Bridge is still running, but that's very limited capabilities to move massive amounts of troops and equipment. So it's not viable for them. They are quite literally trapped. They are quite literally trapped. They have to, if you want to live, if you are in the Kherson Oblast as a Russian soldier, to live, you either have to hope that you can swim across the giant Dnipro River, or you have to surrender. Because your other two options are to either be killed in combat or drown. As we continue down here, we see more successes by the Ukrainians. Today, only 48 hours after the fall of Vysokopilia, another city has been liberated. This one is Novovoznesensky, which has been liberated as well. This is kind of on this axis of advance by the Ukrainian forces. We do have another video of them raising the flag here at this village. So it does have copyright music, so I'm sorry about that, guys. Here they are. He's going to climb on top of this building. He's going to raise the colors. There you go. That'll do. So there you go. Another village has been liberated. And that really kind of shows you at least where at least one of these axes of advance are, where they're kind of pressing into Russian lines. So we can see kind of their axis here. They post reportedly they had Vysokopilia kind of encircled earlier. And they had given them an ultimatum before this offensive even began. And now we can see Vysokopilia. We saw Alhin here, so we know that they were pushing on this side too. And we've also seen them push southward too. So you're really starting to see that breakup in the Russian lines here, as that video evidence is showing. We can update these maps as we have them. And there is no brakes on this train. There are no brakes. The Ukrainian forces continue to press on within the Kharkiv Oblast, and we can kind of guesstimate this is maybe from this area as well. Not confirmed, but we can kind of guesstimate that this is likely from this area as well, where the Ukrainians are they keep going. They just keep going. Here's an entire group of T-64s, which is the main battle tank of Ukraine. here on the move, and they do have their anti-mine, their anti-mine plates here up in the front, so it's pretty dope. You can see them rolling along here. And they're ready to go. And we can tell this is a T64 based off of the stamped road wheels. This is the only T-Series with stamped road wheels on them. Everything else has milled. So it's pretty sweet to see the Ukrainians on the move here. And we actually get a little bit of footage here. So this is a Ukrainian tank firing on the move. And we have two parts to this. And so here they are. They are on the move. They are engaging Russian targets as they're operating here. Once again, this is a Ukrainian, I believe it's T-64. And he stops. And he's aiming, and fires. He puts a round on target there. We actually have a little bit of a, I believe it's a clear portion of that video. A little bit clear. So here you go. It is another really good hit by them. And you're going to see this is some kind of a Russian vehicle here. So we're going to slow that down here. So he fires. And the first thing you see is this. So I want you to watch what happens to this. It immediately evacuates the area. And now you get to see some of the heavier stuff that starts flying up. Like that thing is leaving Earth's orbit. Like this piece of metal, this giant chunk of metal is leaving Earth's orbit right now. And that's kind of what it looks like. Like it's just, I don't watch it fall down either. You don't get to see it just come back down. But yeah, that's, if you are inside that, like if that is still has a crew inside of it, they're dead. Like there's no doubt about that. They are absolutely dead. You don't live through something like that. We see some more successful strikes here in the Kherson Oblast. The Armed Forces of Ukraine destroyed 9 Russian 152mm self-propelled howitzers, 2 S-19 Mista S, 152mm self-propelled howitzers, 2 A-65 Mista B, aileron unmanned aerial reconnaissance vehicle, an ammunition depot near the village of Tamina Balka, and a ferry crossing near the village of Lvov in the Kherson region, an enemy control point, and 2 checkpoints in the Borislav and Kukovka and Mykolaiv regions on September the 4th. And that's coming from Operational Command South. Let's see, where's Lvov? Are you on this part of the river? It's Dashi. Okay. Over here, maybe? Nope, not over there. So it must be over here by Novokukovka. Interesting. So anyway, they're doing very well there. More successful strikes. UAVs were also down. Quote, the Armed Forces of Ukraine shot down 2 Russian Orlan-10 UAVs and an air-to-surface missile KH-59 in the Mykolaiv and Kherson regions on September the 4th. That's coming from the press service of the Air Command of Air Command South. The dam bridge here at the Novokukovka Dam, according to the newest Sentinel-2 imagery, has shown that essentially the transport bridge has completely and fully collapsed. There is no bridge anymore. See, there's the bridge. There's the lack of a bridge. You see, there's just a causeway now. Yep, so there's no crossing that. There's a Buk system which was destroyed. For those that don't know, a Buk system is reportedly responsible for shooting down Malaysian airlines here in Ukraine back in 2014. And one of those has been destroyed. It's a SAM system, or a surface-to-air missile system. And there is a much more graphic section of this video, but this is very clear that Buk system, Russian Buk systems have been destroyed. Take a look.
Все, пацаны. Я регион. Сука, бля, мы в рубашке родились, товар. Все, пацаны.
Yeah, also the crew, dead. Absolutely dead. There's no... Yeah, they got him in that strike. They did not survive. There is evidence to show that. Once again, there's an 18+ video version if you're interested. The pontoon crossing here over at Derivka. Derivka, the bridge there was destroyed quite some time ago by Ukrainian forces as they were kind of getting used to the HIMARS. It was, I believe, either their first or their second bridge that they actually destroyed with HIMARS. I think they did the strike on the Antonovsky Bridge, the first one, and they cratered some of it, and then they basically every 50 meters, they put a HIMARS round through the entirety of the bridge over at Derivka. They built a pontoon bridge. That's been blown up too. So there is no crossing the Inhulets River. The Inhulets now cuts the Russian forces in half. The Russians you have here at the north have to rely on any ferrying across the river here at Novokakhovka. And there is not a whole lot that they can do because the bridge, once again, is completely destroyed. The Antonovsky Bridge is also completely unusable. They have to use a ferry, but they cannot cross to each other. They cannot. There is no other bridge across the Inhulets that is in Russian-occupied territory. It was only the one at Derivka, and only the pontoon one. That too has been destroyed. They are completely cut off from each other. They are now cut in half. You see, there is the cratered bridge over here at Derivka from much earlier in the war, and that is the pontoon crossing that they had built. It is no longer there. It has been completely and utterly destroyed. Reportedly, a coal plant is on fire here in the Kherson, or here in the city of Kherson. It's not clear if this is due to a Ukrainian strike or if this appears to have been some kind of a military accident. Either way, it is on fire here, and it's quite a toasty one at that. And then as we jump up here, as we jump over here, this is over by Chernobivka, meaning most likely the Kherson International Airport, which we know is a big hub of Russian military activity. More explosions are being reported near Chernobivka, and this area, once again, is highly struck. They have struck the Kherson International Airport so many times. I don't know why I don't know if they just keep losing the commanders of this installation in the strike, and the replacement gets there and he's like, yeah, this is a fantastic position. Let's just rearrange some of the air defenses, and then they keep getting blown up every time, and they keep doing the same thing over and over again. I'm not quite sure if that's the thing, or if they just don't have a better option, but the Russians just keep using Kherson International Airport as a huge military facility. It's not going very well. But more explosions are being reported here in Chernobivka tonight. So it was likely another strike on this facility. Just take a listen.
Ни хрена себе, вы видите? Вот, возле Гопров. Вот. Видно отсюда.
Yeah, so needless to say, it's you're getting extra spicy fireworks. So if you're over there in Chernobivka right now, you jump up here into Mykolaiv Oblast. Reportedly, 2 missiles were downed on September the 5th. Ukrainian air defense forces shot down 2 Russian missiles in the Mykolaiv region. That's coming from Operational Command South. And as we jump over here to Odessa, we get 2 different updates here. Quote, on September the 5th, 3 more ships with Ukrainian agricultural products left the ports of Odessa through the grain corridor. And this, once again, coming from the official Twitter account of the Turkish Ministry of National Defense. Another update today regarding that. On September 6th, 6 more ships with Ukrainian agricultural products left the ports of Odessa through the grain corridor. So we've seen a massive increase in the amount of ships that are leaving the port of Odessa. There's quite a significant amount of ships that have been routed to Odessa and the Odessa region to get these supplies out. Quite an extensive amount, in fact, and it's pretty impressive to watch. I mean, we went from having no exports to, I believe they have 8 ships or so that are currently en route. I think President Zelensky said 23,000 metric tons of grain are headed for Somalia right now, which is absolutely amazing. Absolutely amazing. They're going through some of the worst drought and famine that has occurred in the last 40 years in the Horn of Africa. So it's amazing to see something like that. But that actually wraps up everything inside of the country of Ukraine. That doesn't mean that's everything, though. There's plenty of other stuff outside of the country of Ukraine. We have some stuff from Russia. We have some stuff from Europe. We have some stuff from regarding other situations throughout the world. So let's go ahead and take a look at some of that. And of course, we jump up here. This is out of Moscow. So Russia's gas giants, the Gazprom, their main gas company, released a new ad on their Telegram channel with a threat of a cold winter for Europeans.
Зима будет большая, вот взгляни-ка за рекой.
Yeah, so as they're talking about how it's how gas and energy shouldn't be used as a weapon, they use it as a weapon. Richard W. It's called blackmail. Blackmailers never win. Yeah, that's 100% true. By the way, that will actually immediately lead us into the next story, where gas prices are actually falling throughout Europe. So they continue to fall despite Russia completely cutting off all gas supplies to Europe. Here's a chart for you. Wow, crazy how that works. Huh. Weird. It's like the whole world doesn't have to worry about whether or not Russia's going to do it now or not. Weirdly, they just ended the crisis that they were trying to commit. It's like it blew up in their face. Huh. Weird. I can't imagine if that has to do with any kind of like fresh exporters or anything, or diversifying. So there you guys go. So this is, and also Russia is just shooting itself in the foot. So this is a great infographic. This shows you all of the different gas lines that run through Russia and through Europe. And what this shows you is, look at all of these gas lines and all of these gas lines that they built for Europe. And let me kind of shrink myself a little bit there. Look at all these gas lines they built for Europe. And look at the ones that they have going east, back to China. They don't have anyone else to export. Like, no one else is going to buy this gas. China doesn't really need it. They don't care. They don't also have the infrastructure to do that, and the amount of infrastructure it would need. They can't supply their own troops in the battlefield. That's their first and foremost priority. Your military-industrial complex in a war always takes first priority. You think they give a care? You think that they're going to be able to build a gas pipeline fast enough to recover any of these losses and build back their war chest? No. Rusmosh asks, have you heard of people catfishing Russians in Ukraine, sending texts to soldiers pretending to be sexy women looking for boyfriend? When they answer, they are geolocated. I have heard of that. It is hilarious. I am sure it has happened. All of a sudden, so since I've started doing this, weirdly enough, since I started doing this, and since I started following all this, I've gotten a lot of weird kind of, how do I say this, a lot of weird, like, Ukrainian women on my Twitter, and they just randomly follow me, and I wonder if it just happens to be that kind of a thing or not. I'm not sure, but that is just always a problem with the internet anyway, so I guess that's what happens when I'm a young man in my 20s. But, yeah, so, yes, I have heard of it. Yes, it's very interesting. I think it's hilarious. This is why you turn off your location. Like, we weren't even allowed to have, like, Fitbits and stuff because, you know, that works. You know, you can hack into a Fitbit. It has GPS location because it uses GPS in order to track how many steps and distances and everything that you've walked or ran or whatever, and then that can be hacked, and you can map out where they're, like, walking and running and what trails they take frequently and everything else. Yeah, it's pretty crazy the stuff you can do. That was something that they warned about to us when I was in Syria. They were like, yeah, don't wear a Fitbit. Take the location off of your phone. Only connect to the Moralsat Wi-Fi. Don't do this. Don't do that. Don't take pictures. Don't take pictures outside. Don't take pictures with any physical features. If you're going to take a picture, make sure you're in front of a blank white wall. And yeah, there's all sorts of stuff. But yeah. But anyway, the Russians, they just shoot themselves in the foot. Gas prices are falling in Europe, finally, that they've cut off the gas now, and they don't have any other way to get an income, really, now that everyone has pulled their business out of the country. Meanwhile, Estonia is looking at Ukraine's partisans with glorified intent. What we see here is that Estonia is looking at the partisan activity in Ukraine and the Russian-occupied territories, seeing how much damage they're doing and how much of a problem it's causing Russian occupational forces. And they've gone, you know what would make sense? If we industrialize that capability. So the Estonians here are, the Ministry of Defense of Estonia is preparing a law that will allow the preparation of armed resistance in the occupied territories, the organization of safe houses, and training of agents in the creation of caches for storing military equipment. We are talking about organized partisan or underground activities with the involvement of the local population if some parts of Estonia is occupied, stated in the material. For this, the agent networks and special infrastructure will be created. For example, safe houses and hiding places for partisan struggle. It is planned that a number of people involved in such activities should not exceed 0.1% of the country's population. The Ministry of Defense is going to submit a bill for approval to authorities in September of this year. What this means is we're going to take the partisan idea, like the resistance movement idea, and we're going to exploit the hell out of it, and we're going to turn that up to about 11. We're going to make it an official thing. That is nuts. That means Estonia, if you take over Estonia, you are going to fight insurgencies. Like, you are going to fight an insurgency, and they are going to be well supplied, well equipped, well trained. Like, you're not going to be fighting like some ad hoc militia. No, this is like an actual thing. They're preparing for an industrialized version of an insurgency on an industrialized, military-backed, government-funded scale. That is insane. Basically, that dooms any invasion of Estonia. There is no amount of fighting. Look at the last 30 years of history. Xenocide says, turn it up and rip the knob off. It's exactly what Estonia is doing. Like, think about it. Think of the last 30 years. You had 20 years of which the United States fought insurgencies in Iraq and Afghanistan. And guess what? The United States is still in Iraq, still fighting the outcome of the Iraq War and the follow-on civil wars and everything that happened as a result of the destabilization of the region, and they're fighting the Islamic State and they're fighting Al-Qaeda, and then you take a look at Afghanistan, and the Taliban still took over the country after 20 years of fighting. And then look at before the United States did it. You know who else did it before that? The Soviet Union. They got their ass kicked for 10 years by the Mujahideen. It doesn't work in your favor. There's no amount of fighting, there's no military power on the planet that has ever won hearts and minds enough to stop a full-blooded insurgency from eventually winning out just due to the enemy getting tired. The American Revolution was fought that way. Vietnam was fought that way. You have every single, just think of any time that hearts and minds were a thing, or at least attempting to, then that has never worked out in anyone's favor. No invading army has succeeded at that. They have failed every single time. Every time. Germany just unconditionally surrendered. They didn't... It's not like there was an insurgency afterwards. They just surrendered. So you can't even say, well, I forget what they're called. The Fliegensturm? No, that's not the right word. The civilian militia at the Battle of Berlin that were using, single fire, bolt action rifles. Not bolt action, but, basically muzzle-loaded, breech-loaded rifles. But yeah, if you want more, you can go and check out www.err.ee, and they have that. Or you can just go to our website. We have all the maps listed, so you can just click on these links. Go over to London, and Liz Truss has officially become the United Kingdom's new Prime Minister after winning the Conservative Party race for Prime Minister. So she was the Secretary of Foreign Affairs. Liz Truss' first phone call was with President Zelensky, but she will be leading the country. Liz Truss is now the official Prime Minister of the United Kingdom. She took power, and at the time, the country faced a cost of living crisis, industrial unrest, and a recession. She picked up 57% of the eligible votes among the Conservative Party members. Rishi Sunak, former Chancellor of the Exchequer, got 42%. She will travel to Scotland on Tuesday to be appointed by Queen Elizabeth II and then enter 10 Downing Street as the third woman to serve as the British Prime Minister. So as we're going to go ahead and jump right into this here before I answer that question. There she is. She will be the official Prime Minister.
As Prime Minister, I will pursue 3 early priorities. Firstly, I will get Britain working again. I have a bold plan to grow the economy through tax cuts and reform. I will cut taxes to reward hard work and boost business-led growth and investment. I will drive reform in my mission to get the United Kingdom working, building and growing. We'll get spades in the ground to make sure people are not facing unaffordable energy bills, and we will also make sure that we are building hospitals, schools, roads and broadband. Secondly, I will deal hands-on with the energy crisis caused by Putin's war. I will take action this week to deal with energy bills and to secure our future energy supply. Thirdly, I will make sure that people can get doctor's appointments and the NHS services they need. We will put our health service on a firm footing. By delivering on the economy, on energy and on the NHS, we will put our nation on the path to long-term success. We shouldn't be daunted by the challenges we face. As strong as the storm may be.
So anyway, that's just her address there. But as we take a look here, so got a question. So this comes from Sapika on Discord, And they say, didn't Switzerland kind of perfect the military / partisan homeland defense long ago? Well, so Switzerland's like probably one of the hardest countries in the world to invade, considering they just live on a mountain. Like, they just live in a mountain, essentially. It's the entire country's a fortress. They are every single person in their country is trained to fight in the case of a conflict. There is no amount of, like, nobody wants to screw with Switzerland. Not even Nazi Germany. Like, not even Nazi Germany. Nazi Germany was like, Switzerland said, we're going to stay neutral. And then they also have profited, World War I, World War II, Switzerland didn't get involved. They profited off of literally selling arms to both sides and just didn't lose anybody to the war. And then Nazi Germany left them alone. Took all of Europe except for Switzerland. Liechtenstein, Austria, of course you have Germany, you have Belgium, Luxembourg, France, Italy. They had every single country, and then Switzerland's just kind of in the middle chilling for a long duration of the war. Didn't care. Didn't bother them. They weren't afraid. You want to know why? Because invading Switzerland is nigh impossible. It is the dumbest military decision you could possibly make. It will quite literally end your career and the lives of everyone in your army. Yes, invading Switzerland is a terrible idea. Yes, they have a fortress as a home. And yes, they did quite literally perfect. They did quite perfect the whole partisan activity, because every single person in the country of Switzerland can pick up a rifle and immediately defend all of those different choke points. In 1912, the German Kaiser visited Switzerland and asked the Swiss minister what the 250,000 strong Swiss army would do if Germany attacked with 500,000 troops. The reply: shoot twice and go home. Yeah, Switzerland's not the country to screw with. Which, by the way, considering they sat out World War I, World War II, most of the wars in Europe throughout pretty much most of modern human history, and Switzerland is still backing Ukraine. I want you to think about this. They have remained a neutral country throughout the greatest large conflicts in human history, and they still have backed Ukraine. Do you know how bad you have to screw up for Switzerland to have an opinion on your military conquest? They didn't say anything about the Nazis. They didn't say anything about the Kaiser. They didn't say anything throughout World War I or World War II. They literally watched the entirety of Europe slaughter each other twice, the nuclear bomb be dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, and they didn't have a military opinion on any of it. They just remained neutral. And they still have a military opinion on Russia's military exploits in Ukraine. That's how bad the Taliban also said we should show restraint. The Taliban and Switzerland have opinions on whether or not Russia should or should not have invaded Ukraine. And they're both going with no, Russia's in the wrong here. The Taliban and Switzerland. Both of them. And it also pushed two countries that essentially would have never otherwise joined the NATO alliance, because Finland already beat the Soviets once. They had the White Death. They're not afraid of anybody. And now they want to join NATO. Sweden, equally so, also fought major wars with every land power. Sweden has been a major power in Europe for a while. Also joining, guess what, the NATO alliance. Yeah, Xenocide, that happened really long time ago, actually, very early on. Yeah, the Taliban said that they should show restraint. There's actually a General Grievous meme about it. I think it's odd. Hold on. Taliban show restraint. Ukraine. Hold on. Taliban on Ukraine. I got it somewhere here. Seriously, no? I'm sorry, I'm looking up memes because I think we can all agree that memes are pretty funny. Oh, come on here. Seriously? No? Damn. I can't find it. I'm sorry, guys. I've let you down. I will post it in the Discord after this. I am sorry, but I'm not going to spend too much time here. Yeah, the Taliban literally said that Russia needs to show restraint. Yeah, so it's pretty bad. That's pretty bad when even the Taliban and Switzerland and Finland and Sweden all have opinions on a war. And they, for the large part, Finland and Sweden not so much. They did have stuff happen in World War II. But, I mean, Switzerland literally watched the Nazis take over the entirety of Europe. And watched both world wars go by. And said nothing. They watched the Civil War in Spain. And they watched 2 world wars. And countless wars before that. And smaller conflicts throughout Europe. Didn't say a word. And then Russia invades Ukraine. And they're like, wait, that's the line. They watched the Holocaust happen at their border, and they were like, nah, this is fine. And then now Russia invades Ukraine, and they're like, whoa, whoa, whoa there, bud. Whoa, you can't do this. That blows my mind. Where I have to wonder what Switzerland's boundaries are. I really do. But yeah, trying to take Switzerland is a terrible idea. As we start moving here into the middle of Europe, as we start moving into the Middle East, sorry. So this new footage of the runway here at the Aleppo International Airport shows the result of Israeli airstrikes here. The airport is now out of commission and has been cratered, and we are starting to see all those flights getting diverted over to Damascus. As we jump down here to Yemen, 28 people are dead after AQAP militants attacked Yemeni soldiers. Al-Qaeda-linked AQAP militants attacked pro-Saudi forces in South Ibadan, killing 21 soldiers, including the 1st Counterterrorism Brigade commander Yasser Nazir bin Shai, who is and injuring several others. At the time, the attacking jihadists lost 7 of their own killed, and 2 more were captured. The reason for the attack was that the counterterrorism operation started in the region against the militants. So they're currently hunting militants in Yemen. Jump up here to Afghanistan, where Ahmed al-Massoud II is looking for India's support. The leader of the resistance front said in an interview with the Indian Express that he was in contact with all instances of the Indian authorities and is counting on the political and logistical support of the country. In his rhetoric, he uses the word counterterrorism argument, referring to the Taliban's repeatedly confirmed ties to terrorists. But in New Delhi, they are still procrastinating, weighing all the pros and cons and doubting, according to Masood, this can be deadly. Another point of pressure is humanitarian aid. The opposition leader claims that the Taliban distributed 50,000 tons of Indian grain based off of ethnic preferences in favor of the Pashtuns and nepotism in favor of relatives of the militants themselves. And that is Ahmad al-Massoud II. His father also fought against the Taliban as the leader of the Northern Alliance and assisted American forces. In Kabul, explosions near the Russian occurred near the Russian embassy in Kabul. In front of the Russian embassy in the Darul Aman district of Kabul, a powerful explosion occurred at the moment when 2 diplomats left the building. 2 Russian embassy employees were among 6 people killed. Another 10 people were injured in the blast. Sources in Kabul hospitals report 10 killed and 18 injured in total. Police spokesman Khalid Zadran said on Twitter, today around 11 a.m. local time, a suicide bomber who is planned to blow up his explosives among a crowd of people was identified and shot by security forces near the Russian embassy in Police District 7, Kabul. As a result, his explosives went off. The Islamic State did claim responsibility for today's attack at the Russian embassy. Whoops, sorry about that, folks. So, luckily for me, Riley, one of our moderators, did find that meme, by the way, regarding the Taliban. So, here you go, everybody. This is the Taliban and their opinions regarding the war on Ukraine. Oh, yes, the negotiator. Yes. So, this is a real thing. This is a real thing, apparently. Taliban urges Russia and Ukraine to show restraint, to solve conflict through dialogue. As most countries implore Russia to stop military attack, the Taliban on Friday issued a statement asking both sides to desist from violence and start dialogue. The Taliban. We all know how peaceful the Taliban are, don't we? Jeez. And this is coming from Khalid Zadran regarding the explosion there in Kabul. This is from his official Twitter. And there you go. There's the Islamic State claiming the attack. They always have the same look in every photo. It's just that, I swear, they just take the same photo and they just use it for like 10 different things. Do as I say, not as I do, coming from Xena's side. Rusmosh asks, what do you know about Russian conscript training? I know a little bit, but not a lot. Russian conscript training is very minimal. It's very basic because conscripts just serve 1 year and then they are offered to serve for longer in the actual military, and they actually get an increase in pay and rank and all that fun stuff. But conscripts are very minimally trained. They are trained pretty much as a basic rifleman to an extent. Some of them are trained in other aspects as well, depending on the branch they go into. They will become sometimes crews and tanks. That's one of the reasons one of the reasons why you would use conscripts and tanks is because Russia maintains a very sizable armored force, but for their main battle tanks, such as the T-Series, T-72, T-80s, and T-90s, and as well as T-14s, Those are crewed. I only know of actual military personnel, active duty ones. But the conscripts will crew T-72s, T-80s, and T-90s. And the reason being is they have an auto-rotating carousel and an auto-loader. So they don't require an ammo man inside the vehicle. It's a very simple system. A lot of what they have is analog. And generally speaking, you do not require a lot of training to operate these tanks effectively at a very basic skill level. Now, the employment of these are definitely left up to officers, of course. Russia is a very officer top-heavy kind of military force, so it makes sense. But the conscripts receive a lot less training. In general, Russian forces receive a lot less training. They have a much smaller budget than, say, the United States maintains for their military, as well as, and that definitely shows in their training. The American tankers, for instance, can fire upwards of hundreds of rounds throughout their career through gunnery schooling and training and everything else. The Russians may fire like 17 live rounds their entire career. They're very minimal training. They just don't have the budget to kind of keep up anymore. While Russia maintains a large, sizable armored force, and while it does seem impressive because it's mechanized in most factions in most ways, with the exception of about essentially your special operations forces. Russia doesn't maintain any light infantry units, and they're really backwards compared to most modern military doctrines. That's kind of the issue for them. I think that's the most detrimental thing. They use military equipment unsupported. They use tanks and armored vehicles unsupported by infantry, because they don't maintain any light infantry, despite having those conscripts, and that would be what conscripts would best be trained for. And they don't maintain... Their ideology is they flatten an area with artillery, and then they drive an armored spearhead through it, and they put all the armored heavy things in front of the really squishy guys, which makes sense on paper, but the reality is that tanks and armored vehicles do not have great situational awareness. And because of this, and because they have very limited field of view, they have very limited situational awareness, they are very easily taken out unsupported. And you see this in many different ways. You see this even in the Russian engineering. Their tank commander hatch opens forward to protect the tank commander, whereas NATO vehicles, it will open to the rear behind them to give them a better field of view. You see it in a lot of different fashions. Most American and armored vehicles are going to operate turret with hatches open a lot more frequently. At least the commander's hatches are going to be open more often to maintain situational awareness. The Russian hatches are going to be closed to prevent sniper fire from killing the tank commander, or external factors killing the tank commander. You see that in a lot of different ways. But the Russians don't maintain a military force that... They don't operate well within their own capabilities. They don't realize their own capabilities and limitations, and therefore they try to operate outside of those limitations, and it doesn't work very well for them. Russia was a world power. Was before this war. I definitely would say they are no longer a world power. The reason being is they can project power on a limited scale globally. Like, they could send troops to Syria, and they could conduct limited scale military operations with limited objectives within Syria. And they did, and they do. They still do. But that's more or less because the infrastructure was already there. It's been there for some time. Russia could send, guys to go train in Venezuela if they wanted to. It's something they have the capability of doing. They could do that stuff in a limited way. So they're a world power. Much like France. France is a world power. Wouldn't call them a superpower. I'd call them a world power. Because France can, as we saw in Mali, can conduct global military operations. But they are not a world superpower, I wouldn't think. Like, they're not rocking the world's... Like, the Leclerc is an awesome tank, don't get me wrong, but it's not like the world's craziest... it's not like the world's craziest army either. Germany... The Leopard 2 and the Leopard 1 and the Gepard, great vehicles, great equipment, world-class military equipment, not a world superpower, but that kind of thing. But anyway, Russian conscript training, I know very little. It's very basic. They're not very good at what they do. They are put into roles that they really probably shouldn't be. And if I was going to have conscripts, I would keep them at the basic rifleman level, maybe some cross-training with machine gunnery, orders, and that kind of stuff. But I wouldn't put them in armored vehicles. Leave that to more standard guys. But they're thrown in there nonetheless. So we continue on here into the Middle East. We jump up here over by Swat, up here in the Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, I cannot pronounce that, region, where a counterterrorism operation ended with 5 military personnel of the armed forces were killed here in Pakistan. The operation took place in the night of September the 5th and the 6th in the northern Waziristan district, where the terrorists were hiding. During the skirmish, the security forces managed to eliminate 2 of the militants. At the scene of the clash, military found weapons and means of communications. Resources of the Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan published in a statement in which they confirmed the fact of a shootout between militants of the group and government forces. In it, they noted that they used the weapons against the military in self-defense. Earlier, for the same reason, terrorists dealt with a policeman. Over here in Islamabad, we get an update with a lot of the flooding that has occurred here within the region that has left many of the tribal regions and border regions with Afghanistan quite significantly impacted. And from June the 14th until September the 5th, 1,300 local time, 1,325 people have died, and another 12,700 people were injured. 5,700 roads, 246 bridges, 1.6 million houses were damaged. 33 million of the population were affected, or 33 million people of the population were affected overall. 637,000 are still living in camps. Scattered thunderstorms and rain was of moderate intensity, and isolated heavy falls were still expected in multiple regions for upcoming 24 hours. It was the wettest August since the start of records in 1961, with national rainfall being at plus 243% above average, and in Balochistan plus 590% above average, and in Sindh over here plus 726%. Yeah, quite insane levels of rainfall there. And they had this is coming from their National Disaster Management Authority here in Pakistan, and they have all of their sit-reps regarding all of these. Insane amounts of rainfall, insane amounts of people affected by this. This is coming from the World Meteorology Organization, or WMO. Oh, look, a new thing to follow. Thank you. We always got to expand those sources, folks. So quite devastating here in Pakistan, though. That is an immense amount of flooding. It's not the only natural disaster we have ongoing right now. A 6.8 magnitude earthquake happened in Sichuan province. Here, 10 kilometers of depth on the 5th, at least 66. It has killed at least 66 people, with 15 currently missing. 253 people have been injured, and 16,000 households have been cut off. 10 aftershocks of 3.0 or magnitude or above were recorded up to 2 p.m. on the 6th, or today, local time, which is about 2 a.m. Eastern Standard Time.
China is making all-out rescue.
Yeah, so I'm not going to listen to that automated thing. But you can see the situation here. Not very good. Pretty sizable earthquakes. Why do you do rigid military formations if you are rescue workers? You just check this out on Global Times. Daily Beijing. There's plenty of stuff here. The USGS giving us their updates here. So pretty crazy. Pretty crazy. Pretty big earthquake overall. So jump down here. This is in Kenya. William Ruto confirmed by the Supreme Court as the president of Kenya. The Supreme Court of Kenya, presided by Honorable Justice Martha Koome, Chief Justice and President of the Supreme Court of Kenya, ruled yesterday that the consolidated presidential election petition challenging the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission be dismissed. The court unanimously upheld the election result and declared William Ruto as president. And there you go. That is the official ruling by the Kenyan government. And I'm just gonna follow that real quick. Sorry guys, I'm seeing a lot of new stuff to follow here that I haven't seen before. We have a couple different updates as we jump over here to North America. The first one being up here. Well, actually, we're going to go to DC here real quick. We'll come back to that one. So, having supply issues, Russia. Declassified U.S. intelligence says Russia is turning to North Korea to buy millions of artillery shells and rockets, raising questions about the ability to supply its army. Russia reportedly having these reasons, or having these issues. We are reportedly even seeing shells from 1964 as one of them that I saw today. I cannot confirm or deny that at this point, that they are having that serious of an issue. However, the Russian stockpiles are quite considerable, so it is pretty much never ending. As we see here, the only reason the Kremlin should have to buy artillery shells or rockets from North Korea or anyone is because Putin has been unwilling or unable to mobilize the Russian economy for war, or at even the most basic level. If you want to check out some more regarding that, you can get it from the New York Times. President Biden did make his final decision as to whether or not to declare Russia a terrorist state or a state sponsor of terrorism. And the decision is that they will not be declared a state sponsor of terrorism, as they have maintained a diplomatic route there, or a diplomatic route on that. The Biden decision, it could cause delays in food exports and jeopardize deals to move goods through the Black Sea, as well as other major diplomatic ramifications by doing so for the United States. Quote, Ukraine will continue to demand that Russia be recognized as a terrorist state. And that's coming from Ukraine's foreign minister, Dmytro Kuleba. Up here in Saskatchewan province, up in Canada, we have an update. One suspect is still at large after the mass stabbing incident. A manhunt is underway for one of the two brothers suspected of the mass stabbing that left 10 people dead and 18 injured across multiple locations in Saskatchewan, Canada. Authorities said that there are 13 crime scenes where victims were found across Saskatchewan in the communities of Jane Smith Cree Nation and Weldon. Several victims were injured, at least 15 of whom were taken to various hospitals. Authorities have identified the two suspects as Damian Sanderson and Miles Sanderson and are advised that the public take appropriate precautions. The pair are believed to be armed and dangerous and traveling in a black Nissan Rogue with Saskatchewan license plate 119 MPI. Those are those two individuals. Damian Sanderson, however, was found dead Monday morning on the James Smith Cree Nation in heavily grassed area near a house. Sanderson had injuries that were not believed to be self-inflicted. A manhunt is still underway for Miles Sanderson. And that brings us back down here to New York, and that's because something on the official Twitter for us, I put something out about this yesterday, even though we weren't streaming, and I thought it was worth noting again today. because even though it's a day late, it's never too late. As I've talked about before, the main goal of this project is to raise money for charities and fundraisers and to help people. We want to be able to be the news that goes back directly to the news stories that we talk about. That's why we're never doing any kind of super chats or monetization or anything for this channel. I don't want to make a dime off of any of the news that is reported here. If I want to make money off of YouTube, I'll go make a different channel with different types of content that doesn't require people to be injured or to suffer to do so. So the thing is that with this, it only works through you guys and the community at large. And even though I'm not a big, obviously, like I don't have a whole lot of followers or anything on Twitter, but I wanted to put it out there in case for some reason somebody did see it. And that is that because yesterday was International Day of Charity. To commemorate the passing away of Mother Teresa in Calcutta on the 5th of September, Mother Teresa, devoted to the poorest and the most needed for over 45 years in Calcutta, India. She received the Nobel Peace Prize in 1978 for work undertaken in the struggle to overcome poverty and distress and also constitute a threat to peace. In recognition of the role of charity in elevating humanitarian crises and human suffering within and among nations, as well as the efforts of charitable organizations and individuals, including the work of Mother Teresa, the UN designated the 5th of September, the anniversary of the death of Mother Teresa, as International Day of Charity. And they have put out an entire article regarding this. And I thought it was important to note. Because the thing is that according to the United Nations, there is an unprecedented record number of individuals that are refugees or internally displaced people throughout the world. There's never been at any point in time a larger number of internally displaced people and refugees. You have giant droughts in Africa, the worst in 40 years, and that's leading to famine, and then that's compounded by collateral hunger. And you also have the Islamic State, you have JNIM, you have the fighting in Ethiopia, you have a ton of you have Al-Shabaab, Boko Haram, you have all sorts of groups in Africa. You have constant issues because of climate change. And that affects every single one of us. Every single person, me and you as the viewer, no matter where you are, who you are, what you do, or what you think, it affects all of us equally so. The warmer climates will get warmer, wetter climates will get wetter, colder climates will get colder. And we see that every single year. Worse and worse hurricane seasons, worse and worse thunderstorms, worse and worse droughts. It affects all of us. Europe, the rivers ran dry in Europe. There's horrible droughts in the United States. There's horrible droughts in Mexico. The price and cost of living is going up as arable land is destroyed. A third of arable land in Iraq alone has been destroyed. 90% of the country of Somalia is completely dry due to a drought, collateral hunger because of the war in Ukraine, the lack of grain exports, which the World Food Program, run by the United Nations, believes that upwards of 50% of their grain and their food supplies for humanitarian aid come from the country of Ukraine itself. Most places throughout the world that require humanitarian assistance, 50%, or they have had their rations cut by 50% or more. In the words of the director of the World Food Program, we're taking money from the hungry to feed the starving. That is the situation that the world finds itself in tonight. And that is what it felt, and that's what has been like for some time now. We care about Ukraine. We care about the situation there and the people there. And I care about you as the viewers and that you are getting what help that you may need. The truth is that there are many people throughout the world that are suffering from a multitude of crises, which is why we don't focus on one topic, but focus on all of them, because all of them need your help. So in an idea and in the spirit of the International Day of Charity, I please ask that just like you continue to support these organizations every single day that you come here, that you continue to support these organizations and attempt to at least help with a little bit with what the situation is for many people. If you can't give a lot to charity organizations, whether we support them or whether it's ones that you may know about that we do not support, however you may do so, help people out in life. I have and many times been down quite significantly on my luck and run into many issues and have had to rely on the kindness of strangers. And I'm sure there are many people in the world today that would really appreciate that simple human kindness that seems to have been so long forgotten by this world as we watch so many conflicts tear so many geopolitical fibers apart. So let's try and collectively end this if we can. And that is why I wanted to stop on that last, because yesterday was International Day of Charity, and I really hope that a lot of money was raised yesterday. And I hope that a lot of people were helped. And we're going to start off over here as we get into the interesting news to finish up our night here. We jump over here over in Switzerland. It's a joint team from Switzerland and Austria. The axolotl, or the Ambystoma mexicanum, is an aquatic salamander renowned for its ability to regenerate its spinal cord, heart, and limbs. In 1964, researchers observed that adult axolotls could regenerate parts of their brains even if a large section was completely removed. But one study found that that axolotl brain regeneration has a limited ability to rebuild original tissue structure. Researchers at the Trutling lab at ETH Zurich in the Tanaka Lab and Institute of Molecular Pathology in Vienna created an atlas of cells that make up part of the axolotl's brain, shedding light on both the way it regenerates and the brain's evolution across species. So if you guys want to check out a little bit more about that, go and check out, first of all, theconversation.com has an entire article on it. You can also find the original article there at www.science.org. Once again, the map is available on the website, so you don't have to type all that stuff in. And finally, we jump back down here at the Goddard Space Center. So this is the Goddard Space Flight Center in Greenbelt, Maryland. This is where most of NASA's actual flight projects are ongoing, including that of the James Webb Telescope. Thousands of never-before-seen young stars spotted in a stellar nursery called 30 Doradus was captured by NASA's James Webb Space Telescope, nicknamed the Tarantula Nebula for the appearance of its dusty filaments in previous telescope images. The nebula has long been a favorite for astronomers studying star formation. In addition to young stars, Webb revealed distant background galaxies as well as the detailed structure and composition of the nebula's gas and dust. At only 161,000 light-years away in the large Megalithic Cloud Galaxy, the Tarantula Nebula is the largest and brightest star-forming region in the local group. The galaxies nearest to our Milky Way. It is home to the hottest, most massive stars known. So as we're getting in here, we're taking a look at some of these. So, I guess not. But that is the... So that is the nebula. Which is pretty dope, if I do say so myself. I'll try and zoom in here for you guys. That's pretty cool. That's a pretty cool one. It's very beautiful. Our universe is very beautiful. And it's a real shame that we won't get to see most of it. But hopefully a lot of that changes with the Artemis 1 missions whenever they do occur. Partly Artemis 1 will not be flying anytime soon. They've pretty much written off this flight window And it's going to take quite some time to get that all fixed. The issues that they're running into, and hopefully they're going to give it another chance here later this year or early next year when their next flight window pops up. But pretty cool to see. If you want to look at more, you can go and check out that at nasa.gov and at the Goddard Flight Space Center, where they take a look at NASA's James Webb Telescope images for the Tarantula Galaxy. So, pretty dope. I mean, that's pretty cool. That's just really, really cool. Space is awesome. You guys are awesome, too. But with that, I hope that you guys have enjoyed. And even if you didn't enjoy it, as a lot of this is pretty depressing, I hope that you at least found it knowledgeable. Please be safe. And please be sure to help us with this project. And to help, even more importantly, the organizations below. In our description, we maintain a long-running list of organizations that is also maintained on our website and on our Discord and pretty much everywhere else we can maintain it, of different organizations where 80% of the more of their donations go to their programs and raising money to help people, whether that's through contributing to giving supplies to Ukrainian armed forces, and whether that is to assist with Hope Ethiopia feeding children there in the Tigray region of Ethiopia, where 90% of the population within the Tigray region require humanitarian aid just to survive. Whether that is to help get water to parts of Somalia. Keep in mind that in the Horn of Africa, children in the ages 5 and under are the most commonly affected, with 1.8 million at risk of severe malnutrition or already suffering from life-changing malnutrition, endangering malnutrition, I should say. Or whether that's to support different areas that have natural disasters ongoing, such as Southeast Asia, where they're still recovering from Super Typhoon Rai. But if you have more organizations, please jump onto our Discord and let a staff member know about them. And if you can't give a lot to these organizations, give a little. And if you can't give anything at all, that's okay too. Help us grow this channel. Help us grow this project. The more people that come here and watch the news, of course, you get an independent news source. You may get to learn something. You may get to laugh occasionally, and you may get to feel the need to do something bigger than yourself. But regardless, the biggest thing is the more impact that we will have, the more people that are here. We want to be able to put fundraisers directly onto our streams every single night, and we want to be a global force for good with this project. And the only way we can do that is through you guys. So thank you very much for your support. I hope that you guys will continue to keep coming back. If you can, like and subscribe. Let your friends know about us. Tell your friends and family and your Discord communities. You can follow all of our different social media. I have it listed down in the description as well. If you have more organizations, please feel free to send them to myself or another staff member. We'd love to get those vetted. But thank you very much for your support, and even more so for the support of those organizations and for helping us try and put a little bit of good back in this world. And with that, my name is Paul from the New News. I hope that you guys have a very fantastic night. I hope that you, your family, and your friends remain safe. And if not, I hope you find that safety and security in the near future. We hope to see you back once again tomorrow for 24 hours of news in the review at 10 p.m. Eastern Time and 9 p.m. Central. Until then, have a great night, everybody. Bye now.
Going home, Russian soldiers, going home. Бо ми всіх вас тут змішаємо з багном. Історія до волновахи, чудно кличе, діти нахуй. Тут працює ЗСУ і ТМО. Нам не треба ні конфлікту, ні війни. Та ми готові всіх вас звать до сатани. Тисячі вже полягло, і все більше шверхуйло. То для них нема нічого, крім труни. Russian soldiers going home. Бо ми всіх вас тут змішаємо з багном. Історія до волновахи, чудно кличе, діти нахуй. Тут працює ЗСУ і ТМО. Вызволять пришел, братишка, ну привет. На моей земле тебе один ответ. Нашим людям с кирпичом, даже танки и бачок. Вам не взять нас и за 100 000 лет. хвосту змішаємо з багном. Від стрия до волновахи чутно клич, ідіть нахуй, тут працює зле,